What's poppin', everybody? This is the cartoon kid Ray Rollins coming to y'all today with a nice modern day SpongeBob SquarePants review, and I'm gonna be discussing Season 9, Episode 5, Part 2, called Squid Defense. Now, before I start breaking this episode down, y'all know what I gotta do, man. I gotta give y'all that episode breakdown. This episode starts off with SpongeBob and Squidward pretty much wrapping up a shift at the Krusty Krab. Squidward looks to be walking outside of the bathroom, and then he ends up getting knocked on his ass by good old Sponge at Home and Mr. SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob essentially tells Squidward that he has a karate date, if you want to call it that, after getting off of work with Sandy, and he invites Squidward to join him and Sandy to learn a little bit about karate because SpongeBob is explaining to him that, man, you never know who's going to be out there and you never know who wants to do you harm. How did he say it? You never know what creepy crawler is going to be around any creepy corner or some shit like that. You guys seen the episode, at least I hope. But Squidward declines his offer and he doesn't want to take part in the learning karate. And this pretty much leads us to the next scene where Squidward's walking home, leaving the Krusty Krab. And he pretty much turns a corner, a nice dark corner, okay, where, you know, the predictable thing happens, right? And that predictable thing that I'm talking about is you see this big, extra buff-ass, I don't know, fish, whatever you want to call this dude, pretty much approaching Squidward. You know, this big, gigantic, 9,000-pound shadow, all right? He's approaching Squidward in this dark corner, and being the little scaredy cat that he is, Squidward's like, oh, man, who's there? Who's there? And he sees this big old shadow coming up to him. He starts taking off. Squidward straight up trying to get up out that jam. So Squidward dipping off on a big old monstrous shadow guy, and he ends up smacking into the wall and ends up dropping his groceries, right? The Shadow Man starting to approach him, and let's not forget, the Shadow Man wasn't even speaking, right? He didn't say anything to Squidward. Squidward's like, hey, who's there? Shadow Man's not saying shit. So Squidward gets up and takes off and makes it to SpongeBob's house, and he's straight up pounding on his pineapple door, pretty much begging SpongeBob to let him in, alright? You're not going to see that too many times in the history of SpongeBob. So SpongeBob lets him in, Squidward tells him about everything that's going on, and this is where we get to the whole premise of the episode, which is Squidward essentially is learning karate from SpongeBob and Sandy so that he can, well, quote-unquote, protect himself, when in all reality, Squidward wants to get revenge on this big, muscular pufferfish or whatever this thing was that attacked him, right? When first at the Tree Dome, Sandy essentially tells him that, yo, you can't be using this karate to be getting revenge on anyone. You have to use it to protect yourself. And Squidward essentially lies to her and tells her, yeah, you know, I'm going to do it. I'm going to protect myself. I'm not going to get revenge, blah, blah, blah. So, while at the Tree Dome, Squidward tries to do all the basic techniques. And after realizing that nothing's working, he essentially goes to the Karate Kid routine, right? Doing all of Sandy's chores, watering her garden, washing her windows, taking out her trash, this, that, and the third. And eventually, he ends up having the skills necessary to do all the techniques that he needs to do. Well, at least to be considered basically competent in karate. So, he leaves the Tree Dome, he's walking home, and he hears somebody call out to him. And, you know, what do you know? It turns out to be the big old fish that attacked him last time. And Squidward, he's ready. He's got his skills of karate. He's ready to defend himself now, right? To make a long story short, Squidward ends up giving him the boot box and end up putting a big old fish on his ass. And the fish is like, hey, man, what's your problem? I'm trying to give you back your groceries, man. So Squidward is pretty much on cloud 9 because he ended up whooping this big fish's ass. And SpongeBob and Sandy ended up catching up to him because after he left, before he left the Tree Dome, rather, he said that's what he was going to do, go and get revenge, essentially. So they end up catching up to him. Sandy basically chews him out about using his karate knowledge for revenge. And Squidward's like, man, fuck that shit. Who cares? I can protect myself now. I don't need you no more. I'm a karate master. As he's saying all this, a police officer snuck up on him, put him in handcuffs, and basically took him to jail. So that's pretty much the end of the episode, man. That's a nice, long, drawn-out description / summary of the episode. Now, let's get on to my first initial thoughts of this episode. I remember watching this joint for the first time, I want to say in 2012, 2013. I was still in high school at the time when this came out. And I remember seeing the commercials, and I thought it was going to be something pretty cool to see Squidward actually learn karate. When you hear that summary or commercial of the episode, Squidward learning karate because he ended up getting attacked by some dude for his groceries? Huh, you know, you can't help but to think how the episode's gonna be. And everybody says that the newer episodes of SpongeBob are pretty much shit. I personally don't like to think that way, man, because I'm a longtime SpongeBob fan. Yeah, the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob were the golden years, but there are some hidden gems in these seasons. Am I saying this is one? No, I'm not saying that. Am I saying it's a piece of shit episode? I'm not saying that either. I'm going to get more into that when I get in my review portion of this video. But, long story short, I was really excited to see what this episode was when initially seeing the commercials, because it's an interesting plot or storyline that can unfold in many ways. So, let me get into some of my favorite moments of the episode. I'm going to touch on and a lot of more stuff during my review portion. But to get started, this episode was pretty much a comedy-driven episode, like most SpongeBob and Squidward-centered episodes are. One of the main jokes that I loved in this episode, and you see it get told plenty of times, is that Squidward, he's not one of the most buff guys of the series. He's not going to be the guy that you could think could defend himself in an actual fight. And throughout the episode, it's mentioned numerous times that, man, I don't think you're the fighting type. You know, you got the rubbery arms, and you got the doughiness in the midsection. And Squidward, you know, I wouldn't say Squidward's doughy, but, you know, he's all right. He's kind of slim, but, you know, he does have a little doughiness in the midsection, I suppose. And everybody mentions it. SpongeBob mentions it. Sandy mentions it. And even the cop, when arresting him, mentions it. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious, man. Another thing that I kind of found funny was the fact that Squidward, you know, when first starting out trying to learn karate, couldn't do shit. He couldn't break the boards properly. He couldn't hit the bag properly. He was fumbling and stumbling all over the place, man. It's just one of those gags that you see in, like I said, every Squidward and SpongeBob-centered episode. Squidward is going to be the butt of damn near every single joke. And he definitely was in this episode, or especially the beginning portions right at that moment when he was starting to learn karate. Another thing that I liked is Squidward's arrogance at the end of the episode where, you know, he learned pretty much all the basic techniques and whatnot. And you can see him after he ends up hitting the bag, breaking the board successfully and all that good stuff. He just gets a whole heck of a lot of confidence, right? And you can see that transition all the way from him leaving the treat dome to him beating up the big fish. And even a little bit when he ends up getting arrested. He's in the cop's car and he's not even paying attention. He's like, man, I just whooped this fish's ass, man. I'm on cloud 9. I'm the best. I'm the champ. And then he's talking to the cop and he's like, yo, wait a minute. You're arresting me? What's going on here, man? I just love the whole little gag at the end where the cop tells him, hey, man, you got the right to remain silent, blah, 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 this, that, and the third. And Squidward is just straight up hollering on his way to jail. And the cop's like, oh, well, or not. That was kind of funny to me. I'm not even going to lie. And this episode, I'm not going to say is the funniest episode of SpongeBob. It's not. But to get onto my final review, this episode, like I said, isn't an award winner in my eyes. But I'm not going to classify it as one of the episodes that are, you know, horrendous. There were some moments that I liked in the episode, definitely. But like I said, it's a comedy-driven episode, sure, but it's not that funny. You know, it's a cool, good watch if you ask me, but it's not anything that's like, oh man, this is my favorite episode. And it's also not like something that's like, oh man, this crap's on TV. Let me change the channel. I don't want to see this. Like I said in my initial impressions, I was excited to see how this storyline was going to unfold. If someone were to tell me that, hey Ray, there's going to be some episode of SpongeBob where Squidward's going to have to learn karate with SpongeBob and Sandy because he ended up getting attacked in the alley so that he can defend himself if it ever happens again, I wouldn't know what to say about that. I'd be like, okay, that's an interesting episode. I wouldn't be able to tell you how it all unfold, but I would definitely say that it was an interesting plot line, to say the least. And sure, yeah, the way they led into it was pretty predictable. You see SpongeBob telling Squidward at the Krusty Krab that you never know what creepy creature is going to be lurking around the creepy corner. And, you know, Squidward leaves the Krusty Krab where he gets attacked. Okay, yeah, that's definitely predictable, 100%. this episode is a pretty okay episode. And like I said, it's not an award winner, it's not a favorite episode, and it's not a horrendous episode. So, with all that being said, I'm going to have to hit this episode with a 6.5. There was nothing that was mind-blowing. The episode was comedic. I got a good laugh in every now and then. But it wasn't a gut buster. It didn't have me laughing throughout the entire episode. And sure, yeah, the plot was pretty predictable. But I also do think that it's something that a newer SpongeBob fan would probably enjoy. I wouldn't say that it's an episode that a good classic SpongeBob fan like myself or, any other person who's been watching SpongeBob for the past, 20 years maybe? No, it had maybe 15 years. I think that's when SpongeBob first started. Us OGs aren't going to be like, man, this was a fantastic episode. It was okay, I'm not going to shit on it, but I'm not going to scream to the rooftops about it. A nice 6.5, I feel, is a very, very good rating for this episode out of 10. But that has been my review for Season 9, Episode 5, Part 2 of SpongeBob SquarePants called Squid Defense. This is the cartoon kid, Ray Rollins. Tell me what you think about this episode. Tell me if you liked it. Tell me if you hate it. Tell me what you would rate it. And as always, toss your opinions down in the comments box below. And check out the channel for any other SpongeBob video or cartoon review that may pique your interest. Until next time, I love you guys, and I'll see y'all when I see y'all. Peace out, everybody.